Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Stargirl. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, picking up where last episode left off, we have Courtney in the Shadowlands. And obviously, it looks like Blue Valley to her, but it's a warped version of it because it's, as Cindy kind of explains later on, it's a purgatory. And basically, it's meant to, like, dive you deeper into your fears, your angers, and everything. Because I think for a lot of Courtney, it was a lot of stuff that would hurt her or, like, some regrets. So, for example, like, the first thing she saw was, like, Joey and his family and just, I think, regrets of not being able to do anything for him, And then, because it's also the thing of, like, right, and then met, like, Isaac and his mom, it's like, right, you coming to town, like, none of this would have happened if you had never come to town and become Stargirl, like, a lot of us would still be alive, like, Joey and his family would still be alive, like, him and his dad would still be alive, like, because, Joey's mom also died too, if I remember. Yeah, like, so it's like all of them, plus Isaac and his mom. It's like, if it wasn't for you, like, coming here, starting stuff, we wouldn't be in this situation. All of a sudden, Cindy attacks her. And it's like, wait, you're bleeding, so you're real. But it's like, oh, she's killed her dad like 100. I love that she's like, yeah, I've killed my dad so many times, and I killed you. And it's just like, ah, ha, ha, ha. And she starts laughing. And Courtney's just like, that's psychotic. But it's just because Cindy's like stuck here and she's trying to pretend like she's okay with that, like, oh, this place isn't going to bother her. And I do like that she's trying to chastise Courtney being like, oh, this is all your fault. It's like, what, my fault? It's like, yeah, if you hadn't done what you've done, like, because Cindy was jealous of her because Courtney had everything. It's just that radiance, like, Courtney shined too bright. And that's what she hated. It's like, because you're able to have a happy life. Like, I think now we kind of look back on why Cindy was such a mean girl. I mean, understandably, but from like a psychological standpoint, it's like, right, she wants to lash out at other people that she was like, oh, you had a happy life? Screw you. It's like, no, my life wasn't happy. It was full of darkness and tragedy. So, like, she just wanted, but Courtney was like the personification of that, like, just everything she hates is like, you get to live in the light. I've been shrouded in the darkness my entire life. My dad experimented on me, cut me open, and made me into the monster I am. And it's like, if my dad had never done that, then maybe I would have never accidentally killed my mom like I did. So it's just, but even then, it's like, even Courtney being like, you're the one that started all this trying to get Eclipso, but she got Eclipso because she needed more dark power to overshadow Courtney's light and everything that she represented. It's fascinating. But obviously Courtney doesn't know Cindy's full story, so she was like, yeah, like, I can't, yeah, she's like, yeah, you're the one that went off and killed your dad. It's like, yeah, because of what he did to me, like, you don't understand. So it's like, I'm not afraid of you, Dad, like, so come at me as many times as you like. This is my paradise, being able to kill you over and over again. But then it shifted into, yeah, because, I mean, the place also feeds off your anger too, so it made Cindy, like, give in to her anger. But then it also ripped her apart with, like, her fears and her regrets, and because her mom was like, please don't hurt me again, and obviously Cindy gets dragged off into the darkness, because beforehand Courtney ran into her mom, and her mom was like, yeah, basically, like, oh, I got pregnant, and everything I ever wanted in my life I had to give up because of Courtney. And it's just like, yeah, like, it made her start feeling like, oh, my mom like, had to give up everything having me, like, which is obviously, like, not the case. Like, your mom doesn't regret it one bit, because obviously on the outside, once she finds out there's an opportunity to save you, she drops it. It's like, no, like, we can save Courtney. Like, yeah, even says it herself, like, she would rather die than live without her daughter, And on the flip side, as she was trailing through the darkness, she was seeing the Shadowlands for what they really look like. As Dr. McNider, who finds her, explains, like, yeah, this is what it looks like all the time. Those are just projections. I'm trying to think. There was something similar to this where it's just kind of like, yeah, everything you're seeing is technically an illusion. It's not real. I mean, guess like, some chain of memories type of stuff. Well, Kingdom Hearts chains of memories where everything's an illusion. Nothing's like really real. It's kind of almost like a shadow of it. But yeah, this place is just, it manifests itself to look like things, but it's like, yeah, that array of just darkness is what it really looks like. It's just able to seep into your head and manifest itself into whatever it needs to be just to, torture you. I guess the other one thing that kind of pops in my mind that's kind of similar to that kind of, I guess, works in a similar vein would be the Speed Force. It manifests itself kind of like, because it can look like whatever it needs to or wants to, but also like it can create stuff within itself like that. It has in the past. So I was like, I guess that'd be like the very DC equivalency would be like the Speed Force. But regardless, it's crazy. He's been in here. Luckily, obviously, how Beth's goggles are working for her, keeping like him, because he's seen what this place looks like the entire time. Because anytime he takes his goggles off, all he hears is his daughter's voice, and like that's why when he wanted to show Courtney the truth, it's like, here's these goggles, put them on so you can see everything for what it really is. He made sure to keep his eyes closed because the moment he opens them and like, he'll visually get trapped, and it's already enough that you can hear his daughter crying out for him. So he puts his goggles back on, and it's like, yeah, this place is just like, it's like he knows who Courtney is because of Beth, and it's like obviously lets Beth on the outside know, like, right, Courtney's still alive. We just need to find a means to get her out of the Shadow Realm. And it's like, and I love that, like, even Mike's still being like, oh, I need to just find Thunderbolt. I guess that didn't work out in between episodes, like. He just wasn't able to fully like track it down, because I guess it's like, regardless of everything, it's like, I guess that was somebody's, not unless the pen still managed to go from person to person. Maybe it's not even with the same kid that it was like when he wished it away, like maybe that kid is still like granting other people's wishes or something like that. Maybe that's what that is. I don't know. But Mike was still saying like, oh, we need to find Thunderbolt, but they could actually use the light from Jenny's ring to find the shade. And so I thought that was interesting. Obviously, because Jenny's concern was like, right, if I wasn't so afraid, I could have protected Courtney. But it's like, because my ring was like, because I was coming from a place of fear, my ring wasn't strong enough to stop Eclipso. But this time, like, focusing on what she wants to do, find the shade, save Courtney. The ring is able to take the card and like create a map of Blue Valley, and turns out there's 2 spots, which is interesting. We never actually got to find out what that other spot was, because Barbara and Pat ended up finding the shade at a theater watching a Dorian Gray movie. I'm like, oh, how very befitting, Dorian Gray immortality and stuff like that. So like for you, the shade who has borderline immortality, to be watching that, I mean, maybe there's some forms of like, maybe that's where the shade kind of stems from, like from comic book wise, like maybe he's kind of based on Dorian Gray to some like extent, like maybe he played a role in that character's creation essentially. I don't know. Or maybe, like I said, maybe it's just the apt like parallel that you could, maybe that was never like the jump off point for like the creation of the character, but maybe it's just like, oh, and for the sake of the show, it's like, oh yeah, like it's just meant to be just a parallel. Regardless, I do like that, Pat and Barbara show up. It's like, yeah, like, because the stone was broken before, and yes, it was put back together, but it wasn't enough to fully heal him. So he's like, yep, I'm just sitting here in the dark enjoying this movie for the 7th time. Just, saving as much of my power as I can. But it turns out, yeah, Dr. Midnighter's in there. It's like, he is? Yeah, it's like, I found that fascinating, because at first it's like, wait, because that means the entire time for the past 10 years, you didn't know he was in there, because he thought Midnighter was dead, because he thought like, oh, like, I brought you in, he thought like, oh, I sucked you in. I guess like for him, it's like, if I couldn't immediately spit you out, he's like, oh, well, he's dead. And it's like, but that means for the past 10 years, you just never bothered looking. And I think I understand why. Whereas Eclipso was born there. So, like, the Shadowlands won't affect him like it would anyone else. Even though he's got these powers, even though he's immortal, he's still a human at his core. So going into the Shadowlands, because he has no interest in being there, because I think in the Shadowlands, he'd be just as affected as anyone else. So I think that's why they don't really, I think that's why he never bothered looking, because he's like, I have no interest to go inside the Shadowlands because it would affect me like anyone else. If I wasn't able to immediately, because I guess he was like, I was just trying to absorb you a little bit, but he didn't realize, maybe the whole point was like, I'm going to envelop you in my darkness, that's fine, but he didn't realize at the same time it would be pushing him into the Shadowlands. He probably thought like, all right, you're in my darkness, the moment we're free from the ISA killing the JSA, I'll spit you out. Because McNider, Chuck talked about why, because the shade came to him after his daughter's death, because he knew about Eclipso, but he never did anything about it. And it's just like, right, he felt shame about, like, right, this child died because of me. Because I didn't act, and it's like him and Chuck actually shared drinks. And it's like, that's why out of anyone, when the ISA attacked the JSA, he saved Chuck, because it's like, yeah, because Chuck was like, in some way, I guess he thought we became friends, so he saved me because of that. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. But obviously it's Barbara that convinced him to like save Courtney and them, just because it's like you remind me so much of my sister Emily, because when Emily was alive, he tried to use his powers not for evil, but it's like after losing her, he just spiraled and just went out, kind of just using his powers for whatever, but he tried to be on his best behavior. So in this moment, it's like, right, Barbara, you remind me so much of my sister Emily, fine. If you're asking me to do something, I'll do it. Especially like, because there are so many that have been affected by Eclipso that, for him, it's like, I couldn't stop something that was started so long ago, something that I'm connected to. Our powers come from the same place and everything, so I've never been able to stop Eclipso, and, so much tragedy that has transpired. Once again, these, like, McNider's child and everything, I think it all took its toll on him. Like, he knows what it's like to lose someone that's important to you, and obviously he would never, especially, it's like, seeing Barbara in that same, like, vein, especially when someone that reminds him so much of his own sister, like, of course, he just want to do what he can. And Courtney and Chuck are about to leave, but it's like, no, we can't leave without Cindy. So they try to track her down first, but moving around the place proves harder, because your boy Eclipso decides, like, no, like, I'm going to mess with you a little bit, because, like, despite everything, because he has control of this place. He was born here, so he was able to kind of separate Chuck and her enough that he can, he wants to take her on a tour of, like, oh, look at all that I've done. Like, oh, look at Yolanda, like, all that she's done, and it's all because of you. And I'll look at Rick, where he is right now, the monster in the cage, because of you. And it's like, no, he's here because of you. And it's like, oh, I've destroyed your friends and your family. Like, how does that make you feel about me? And then it's like, oh, where'd you get that necklace from? Your dad. You feel the same way about him that you do me. And Courtney's like, I'm over him. It's like, no, you're not. You hate him just as much as, like, just say it. Like, how do you feel about me? Because it's not your fault, it's my fault. I didn't. So how do you feel? Because that was the thing McNider was telling her not to do, give into her anger, give into her fear. And in that moment, she's like, I hate you. And he was like, he smiles. Because that was the whole point that Cindy was trying to get across. So, like, there's essentially darkness in everyone, including you. You just happen to run away from your darkness. And now that she's tapped into it, you can see that, like, he's happy, because I think now for him, it's like, I've creeped into your heart. Like, that light, that radiance of yours has been the reason why I haven't been able to get to you. Because notice, once again, amongst everyone, Courtney's the only one he hasn't been able to get to. Because, and I guess maybe that's also, like, Starman's, like, light got dimmed the moment they murdered, like, Bruce Gordon. But I think Courtney's always kept that light in her, and it's shone so bright. And now that, like, the cosmic staff is not here to protect you, like, your heart is vulnerable to my influence. Especially now that you've given into your anger. Like, I've cracked open that heart of yours, and now the darkness is pouring out. It's always been there. You've just turned away from it. Now, I think the whole point is probably trying to, like, push Courtney to completely submit to it. Because I think what he's going to try and do is, I think he wants Courtney, like, if he can turn her into darkness, I think maybe it's going to be like, oh, it's kind of, once again, my Kingdom Hearts reference. I think it's like Ansem using Riku as a vessel, or even, spoilers, Xehanort using Terra as a, because that's where that's kind of really started. Xehanort using Terra as a vessel. I think that at its core is going to be what he wants. Like, I think he wants to corrupt her so much because, like, the more corrupt that she is, if you can turn that pure light into pure darkness, like, it'll be a vessel that could be unstoppable potentially. I think maybe even, like, plans on taking over Courtney so he can get the cosmic staff and corrupt it as well. But the moment he got what he wanted, he just disappeared because there was no reason to stay around anymore. So, ultimately, Courtney ends up finding her way to Cindy, and obviously McNarder's like, none of this is real, just go to her, and tries to pull Cindy out, but Cindy, like, obviously it's like her younger version of herself killed her mom, and her mom's like, I loved you, and I still do, and I think Cindy needed to hear that, but still, it's like, it doesn't change the fact is none of that's real, because it's just playing into her regrets. It's like what she wouldn't, maybe that is what her mom says. It doesn't take away from the fact is she killed her mom, and she has the biggest regret. So Courtney feels like, because even Cindy was blaming, it's like, oh, you let me go. It's like, I tried to save you, like, you know, and it's like, now she has an opportunity to make up for that. So luckily all three of them were able to get out. And obviously this pushed the Shade further than he could go. Like, his powers hadn't fully recovered. So, and for him it's like, right, just tell people I died doing something good, you know, and he vanishes, you know. And I think for him, this is his opportunity to kind of fully make up for a lot of, like, mistakes in his life. Like I said, where that other darkness led, I don't know if that led to the Shade. Not the Shade, but, because it's like, oh, their signatures. It had to have been, like, because their power signatures would match, I'm assuming, because I think it was Jenny and Beth that went to go check out the other signature. So I'm like, it had to be, Eclipso had to be the other signature. So I'm like, hopefully Beth and Jenny are okay. I don't know, because I think it speaks volumes that they did, but maybe next episode they'll cut to show you what they kind of were up against for a little bit. But at the end of it all, Cindy's like, alright, so who's ready to go kill Eclipso? So, now that everything has kind of gone down the way it has, I am curious to see what this means for Courtney, confronting her own regrets and everything. Like, now, I'm curious, like, what can she do for Yolanda or Rick? Like, in this moment, like, will she be able to do anything to help them change how, I mean, you can't change how they feel, because yes, they're drowning in their own darkness because of Eclipso, but I think Rick has at least a little spark more of hope, whereas, like, Yolanda, let's not forget, it's not just the brainwave thing she's dealing with. She's also got her family, which I think just kind of pushes her further down, because, like, her family's always been like that tug of her, like, any, like, tugs of regrets and stuff like that. Like, her family just kept pushing her into that. Like, now that she's kind of at that low point, like, she's just going to, like, submit to what her family wants, you know? So I'm like, she's going to be in a little even darker place, but at least, like, Rick has Grundy, so I'm not like that's, but I think that sparks something, like Grundy throwing an apple for him and you know, him eating it. Like, yeah, it's like, you know, making him feel not as alone even in jail. Like, right, I was there for you, you were there for me, you know, kindness begets kindness and stuff like that. So I was under the impression, and we'll see whether this still ends up being the case, whether or not his uncle, like, says, like, no, this is my fault. Like I don't know, because his uncle's, I don't remember if they said, like, his uncle was in a life-threatened, like, situation. So, like, what I mean is, like, he might be in a coma right now. Like, who knows if he's woken up. I was thinking maybe he might be able to change what, I don't know, not unless it's something Rick is still going to have to continue to deal with over the course of the series. I don't know. But obviously Cindy's all about killing Eclipso now that he screwed you over, that he trapped you there. Because time does work differently. So for her, it's like, oh, how long have I been here? Just like Chuck, it's like, yeah, he's been here for 10 years, but, I mean, it probably might feel like even longer. It's like he kept himself from getting driven insane, because he thought he was alone until, like, he was able to keep up only mainly with news from the outside world, but he had submitted himself, like, yeah, I'm just going to be here forever, until Beth contacted him, and it's like, wait, and it gave him hope of, like, no, there's a means of getting out of here, and now he is, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go from here, especially with the Courtney angle of, like, it's seeming like Eclipso kind of got what he wanted. And now, like, it might be that it's an anime reference, and this is kind of a spoiler, but I mean, it's been a couple years, so I think it's fine. It might be kind of similar to the Ichigo and Aizen situation, because Ichigo is the only one who never saw Aizen's Bankai, and it's like, by seeing the Bankai, you can never beat him, because this whole thing is about illusions, and it's like, once you've seen it, you can never ever beat him, but that's why Ichigo was a secret weapon, because he'd never seen his Bankai before, so that gave him an advantage. And I'm curious, is it kind of a similar thing of like, right, everyone has their darkness in them, they've been all affected by Eclipso until now, and now Courtney was their last hope, and now that he's potentially like dived deeper into her heart like that, maybe she can't, because maybe the cosmic staff won't resonate with her anymore. Granted, it still resonated with Starman afterwards, but maybe that's going to be Eclipso messing with her even more. Like I said, she kind of maybe opened the pathway to her. All these theories kind of running through my head about what that's going to be, but I'm curious to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. Only 2 more episodes this season, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.